Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Life Tactics Podcast. I've got with me today a special guest. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while now. It's none other than Dr. Robert Glover. I'll start with a bit of a brief introduction. I'll try to keep it brief as best as I can, at least. And you can correct me along the way, or if you think I do a bit of a disservice for you with the introduction here. Dr. Glover, for anyone who's not already familiar with him and his work, he's a psychotherapist. I'll go ahead and pause right here at the start. Are you still practicing, or should this be former psychotherapist?
Well, yeah, technically I can't say I'm a psychotherapist because I haven't kept a license active in the United States because I've been living in Mexico for several years. And so I call myself a coach or consultant now, even though I do have a doctorate degree and formerly was a licensed therapist.
Okay. So it'd be former therapist. And when you were a therapist, you specialized primarily in marriage and family counseling, right?
Yeah, that my doctorate and background's in marriage and family therapy, right?
Okay. And he's also an author of 2 books, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which we'll be getting a lot into more in a little bit for the meat of this episode, and Dating Essentials for Men. Did I get all those right? Was there anything I'm missing there?
Yeah, and actually a new book has just recently come out in the last couple of months, is Dating Essentials for Men, Frequently Asked Questions, where it's just I answer about 300 questions about dating essentials for men. So that's out and it's doing well and getting great reviews. So
okay, great.
It's all good.
Yeah. And he's a public speaker. And when we talk about his work, the way I would say this to round out the introduction here is he combines takes a unique combination, several different angles and approaches through therapy, men's therapy groups, which may have been more formal work, coaching, workshops, online courses, going on to different podcast shows and being featured in publications and so on and so on, with the main goal, it seems to me, from what I've understood from your work, to help men better understand and break free from the dreaded nice guy syndrome. Does that sound about right?
That sounds good. Yeah, because my emphasis really for about 20 plus years, ever since No More Mr. Nice Guy was published, has been working with men, primarily doing men's groups, men's coaching, workshops and seminars. And, I've always been a relationship therapist and became a dating guru when I became single in my late 40s and had to go out and learn how to date. And the men said, well, teach us. So primarily, I just want to help men have great relationships, fulfill their potential, find happiness and joy, and live with purpose and passion. And I just love working with men just because men are so open. They're looking. They want to live their best lives. And, I guess that's maybe the best way to put it. Is I help men find ways to live their best lives.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to summarize it. Well, since you mentioned your specialization in marriage and family counseling as a psychotherapist, I want to get into that a bit more first. I'm curious, going back even a little bit, what started it all for you with psychology?
That's a good question. I was probably a typical high school student that I had no friggin' idea what I wanted to do when I got out of school. About the time I hit my junior year, I got really actually pretty disenchanted with school. I'd quit playing sports, and so that had kind of been my identity up till then. Yeah, and I didn't think teachers really cared. I probably wasn't at a point yet that I paid much attention. I was probably smart enough to get by and make C's and B's without working too hard. Yeah. And I even thought about dropping out of school. I was pretty frustrated. I didn't know what I was going to do. Yeah. And then I discovered debate my junior year in high school. My older sister had been in it, and I really got energized, and it gave me some direction with speaking and public speaking. And I grew up in a fundamental Christian church, and again, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I thought, well, I always liked going to Bible camp, and I liked Bible history, and I thought I'd like to be a speaker. So okay, I'll become a preacher. And so I went to a Christian college to get a degree in religion or ministry. And my freshman year, one of my very first classes was Psychology 101. And I remember, that just lit me up. I just,
Yeah.
man, this is so cool. Explaining how people work, why we do what we do, helping me understand me better. I just loved it. And so fortunately, I could develop a program called religious education where it combined psychology and ministry. And along the way, I got interested in the idea of doing marriage and family therapy, and at that time, still within a religious context. So when I finished my bachelor's, I went on and got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. Then worked as a minister for a couple of years, and then went back to get my PhD in marriage and family therapy as well. And then continued to work as a minister for a couple more years after that. I'm no longer religious, which is actually not that unusual, for former fundamental ministers. It's kind of when you kind of all of a sudden wake up and go, wait a minute, this stuff doesn't make sense to me. Is what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, went through over the last 30 years a real process of evolution in that regard. But it was that Psychology 101 course that really got me moving, and then got me interested in marriage and family therapy. And then I was in private practice as a therapist for over 25 years, right? Close to 30 years when I discovered Puerto Vallarta, Mexico about 22, 23 years ago, and thought, I want to get back here as much as I can. And at some point, I want to live here. So I kept developing my business to where I could be more mobile. Back before you heard of things like digital nomad, I thought I want, and the internet was getting better around the world. Skype came along, and I thought, I don't have to be in one place. So I gradually built my business to where I can do it anywhere. I have online courses that I teach. I do online consultation. I do workshops and seminars around the world. And so, the whole digital, transformation has let me be wherever I want to be.
Yeah.
So I about 10, 12 years ago, I moved out of the private practice, sitting in my office, listening to people talk, to, being able to do whatever I do, wherever I want to do it on a computer. And so like being able to do things like this with you.
Right.
So that's pretty much how my work has evolved. And as I said, for about 20 years now, is almost 100% been focused on working with men.
Yeah. Right. I didn't know that. You started from a stricter religious background and decided on being, you were going to be a preacher, you said, right?
Yeah. I was a minister for 8 years and have two degrees in religion. And most people are kind of surprised. I like to tell people that because it kind of shocks people, especially after they've heard my, potty mouth. I love to use the fuck word, and people go, "You were a minister?" I go, yeah. So it's always a fun shock.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. Like I said, I didn't know that. It's an interesting journey, and I think it's a good example of how it's not the case for every single person. I think this is a cultural awakening people are realizing, maybe slowly but surely here, is that it's not just one path to figuring it all out. And in the context of going from high school to college, it's not always just a conveyor belt where you're in high school and it's a guarantee that every student discovers what they want, and going into freshman year, they stick with it the whole way. There's so many detours, and you had some detours, and you had to figure it out along the way, and thought that religious study would be it. And after getting 2 degrees, then you're not religious anymore.
And that's an interesting conversation, because probably our fathers or our grandfathers, if they weren't, like working on a farm or something like that, they typically got one job and kept it their entire life.
Yep.
And that's and even like, I know men my generation, because that was kind of the norm, often have shame if they've like changed careers more than once or twice or three times. But statistically, I read somewhere not too long ago that the average person will have 3 careers in a lifetime. And so that's more the norm now. And even with the younger generation, is that probably they'll have multiple different directions that they go.
Yeah.
And I work with so many men, I'd say whether it's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even their 60s. I'm in my 60s. And I work with so many men that say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what my passion or purpose is. Yeah. And so that is, I think, a real crisis for a lot of men, because thinking, all right, at 17 years old, I'm going to, get an insight of what I want to do. And then I'm going to want to keep doing that same thing for the next 60 plus years. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of times men feel shame, like, how come I haven't figured this out? And maybe they had it figured out at one point. Maybe they had it figured out until their 40s. And maybe they got laid off. Maybe they got divorced. Maybe they got burned out. And then, like, what do I do now? Especially people that have professional careers, doctors, attorneys. I read one time that 40% of all attorneys, when asked, would you choose to study law again, 40% say no. And in my courses, I have a class called Nice Guys Don't Finish Last. They rot in middle management. And like, you'd be surprised how many attorneys take that course and say things. I want to play music. I want to write travel blogs. Do it. One of my mantras has been for a long time. I stole this from a movie called The Edge. What one man can do, another man can do. Because a lot of guys say, well, I can't go do that and make money. How do you know? Have other people done that and made money at it? Yeah. I said, can you think of people that have gotten wealthy doing that? Yeah. I go, okay. If it's been done before, it can be done again. Why not you?
Right. So you want men to, and anyone in general as well, I'm sure. Right. But in particular here with men, and I think you say that I remember that you said in the book, when you were focusing on the second book about men reaching their fullest potential, and you talked about it's I think what you're getting at is exposing men or opening their eyes to this limiting belief system they have, and that's part of it. Is why can't I do it too? Because other men, if, like you said, I mean, what sets them apart so much? What makes them so special? That's a good point.
Yeah, because I really started focusing more on, as you mentioned, self-limiting beliefs when I got divorced in my late 40s. And I'd already written No More Mr. Nice Guy. It actually came out the year I got divorced in 2003. And so I had to learn how to date. And not only did I lack the social skills or the interaction with women skills, even though I've been married twice for 25 years, I'd never dated well. And so if I met a woman, and it worked, I'd stay with her forever, even if she really wasn't the best pick, because I didn't want to go out and have to start all of this all over again. And so when I started dating, I realized learning to date well wasn't just learning like some pickup skills and clever lines and this and that. It really was challenging what my unconscious and maybe conscious mind believed about me, women, the world, my attractiveness, my value, sex, and conscious dating, which is kind of the emphasis of Dating Essentials for Men, really is all about challenging our self-limiting beliefs. Things that, I think, as Mark Twain said, the problem we have is not what we don't know. The problem we have is what we think we know for sure, but just ain't true.
Yep.
And so we think, well, I'm not attracted to women, or women don't like sex, or I can't, and by focusing on that, at least in relationship and dating, on what my self-limiting beliefs are, it put a big spotlight on my self-limiting beliefs about me and the world and money and success and celebrity and notoriety. All of those, they've been challenged. And so one of the things that I tell people, everything I write about, everything I teach, has typically come out of what I've struggled with.
Yeah.
If I struggled in a relationship because I was too nice of a guy, I went and struggled with that and went looking for answers and got therapy and joined men's groups. And when I had to learn how to date, I had to struggle with that. So I went and sought answers and went out and practiced. And everything that I teach, I've struggled with. And, they say most people teach what they most need to learn. And that's always true for me. So discovering what are our self-limiting beliefs, what we believe to be true, but just ain't so, is such a powerful practice to let us live our best lives and overcome the hurdles and the barriers and the glass ceilings that we construct for ourselves, and we don't even know we're doing it.
Yes, that's a good way to word that. It's a glass ceiling that we are constructing for ourselves. And one thing, we are going to get into the book very soon here, to make that a last point on that. It's among many other, eye-opening moments I had reading your book, and I've read it more than once, was showing how we often, it's not always the case that it's the world, it's other people. A lot of time it happens in our head. And I'm hardly the first person to say that. And for people listening to this and in the future, it's hardly the first time they're going to hear that. But the difference is, in the point that you and I both trying to make, is there's actually significance in that. It's not just a cliche to throw around. It's actually real. And it shows you, it's just one example of the power of your mind. And you can make it your worst enemy, or you can make it serve you or work for you.
Yeah. And, here's a reality. The world will always look like what we believe the world to look like. And that is where our self-limiting patterns come in. Now, I'm not a big fan or believer in that if we just imagine something or think it, molecules will rearrange themselves and manifest for us. That's kind of a narcissistic, material way to view the world. But I do believe, from a psychological and emotional point of view, if we think the world looks like this, the world's going to look like that, because that's the way the human mind works. It wants consistency. It wants congruency. So, for example, if I think women aren't attracted to me, confirmation bias will keep reaffirming they're not attracted to me. I won't notice the women that check me out. I won't notice the women that smile at me. My brain will think, well, that's really not about me. Same thing with money. If I think, money is scarce and only certain people can get wealthy, I can't. Well, that's going to be true. That's how the world's going to work.
Yeah.
We'll see money is scarce. We won't take risks. We won't take advantage of opportunities. We won't discipline ourselves in order to be able to create income. And so whatever we believe to be true will be true. That's just a reality. So to be able to start challenging those self-limiting beliefs, I have to be nice and treat people well to be loved. And it overlooks the fact that people might love you just the way you are, with rough edges and all. And even if you aren't perfect, people may still find you a really interesting person and enjoy being with you. But if we don't think so, if we think, well, I got to be perfect, I got to do everything right, I can't make any mistakes for people to like me. Well, that's going to be pretty limiting, because everybody makes mistakes and nobody's perfect.
Yeah. That's a great point. So to circle back a bit, we were talking about your family and marriage therapy experience. And when we're talking about the origin of the nice guy syndrome, we're going to get to that very, very soon, and really what that is, to help anyone, and men in particular, who aren't yet familiar with it and might not know they're a nice guy, of course. I wanted to talk first about the origin of, I guess, your process of how you started. So maybe this was, I'm going to assume here, like during your years of therapy. Maybe around when was and how did it happen the first time you started to get some kind of inkling that there was this disturbing trend you were starting to notice with guys? And as you say later, you started to notice that in yourself too, which was also important. So how did that, what did that first look like?
Well, I wish it was quite as clean and clear and intellectually curious as you've described it. Basically, what it looked like is my second wife told me she was going to leave me if I didn't go get help, and I thought, what's wrong with me? I'm a nice guy, But that's the problem. She said to me, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, and you do nice things for other people, but she said you can treat me really, really poorly, really mean. And I go, wait a minute, you're the one that's kind of angry and critical and moody and unavailable and unhappy all the time and screaming, and you're the one that's a mess. And she was, and I thought, I'm the good one here. I put up with all this stuff. I hold it together. But she was right. She says, you can be so hurtful. And the term for what she was describing was, even though I had a PhD, I didn't even know the term, but passive aggressiveness. And nice guys do tend to be very passive aggressive, which means because we're uncomfortable expressing our wants and needs, we're uncomfortable asking for what we want, we're uncomfortable setting boundaries. We don't even have a clue about boundaries. I didn't. I'll talk about more of that in a minute. We don't express when we're angry, because that would make us a bad man, or it might upset somebody. So we keep a whole lot of stuff in. And whether it's resentments, rage, frustration, hurt feelings, and one way or another, that stuff's going to come out. And with nice guys, it comes out in one of two ways, both of which was true for me, that I wasn't really conscious of. One is the indirect, passive, aggressive way, where, subtle put downs, jabs, pokes. jokes that aren't funny, that are hurtful, embarrassing the person in front of friends by telling, sensitive stuff, not following through.
You said forgetting things. Yeah,
not following through, forgetting things, being late, and lies. Nice guys are so fundamentally dishonest. My second wife would call me up. I'd be at work and say, I'm making dinner. What time are you going to be home? And I'm thinking, all right, she wants me home right now, and I go, oh, okay, I'll be home at 5. And I'd know I wouldn't even be able to leave my office until 5. But I would say that because I thought she wanted me home now, and she'd be angry at me if I didn't tell her what I thought she wanted to hear. And so, I'd tell her a lie, mainly out of anxiety. And then so when I would leave after 5, heading home, and I'd be making up the story. Oh, traffic was terrible, and there was an accident, and all these all lies. Right. Because I didn't tell. And so I'd get home, and she'd be upset because dinner was ready and I wasn't there, but I had this story. And finally she said, listen, I don't care what time you come home. Just tell me what time you're going to be home so I can plan dinner accordingly. Yeah. Not because you have to be home at 5, 6, or 7. Just tell me. And I thought, oh, really? And so, she would accuse me of being passive aggressive, which that's an example, or what she called, and I love this term, victim pukes, where all this stuff would build up inside of me, the resentments, the frustrations, the not feeling like she'd given back to me as much as I gave to her. And after, I don't know, a while, something would set that off, and I would just puke all that out, and I'd say all kinds of hurtful things, and I'd say all these things I've been rehearsing in my heads for weeks or months. And I remember occasionally, when all the dust settled and the puke dried, she'd say, how long has that stuff been bothering you? And I'd go, I don't know, 5, 6 months. And she'd ask, did it ever cross your mind to just tell me that was bothering you? I don't know. No, actually, it didn't. And that is so funny to say it now, but it didn't even cross my mind to say, I'm upset at you, or I would like more of this, or please stop doing that. Because I thought nice guys can't do that. We have to do everything to go along to get along. So that's how my nice guy recovery began. She confronted me with that. She said, I'm going to leave you if you don't go get some therapy. Now, she also kept telling me that I was a sex addict because I wanted to have sex with her, and she never wanted to have sex. So I started by going to a 12-step group for sex addicts. I quickly found out I was not a sex addict. I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict. But for the first time in my life, it was this group of just men. So it really was my first men's group. And these guys, they had some hardcore stuff going on in their life. So they were real. They brought their A game to this. And for the first time in my life, having grown up in fundamental Christianity, had a critical father that I avoid doing anything that would upset him, growing up with angry feminism that said all men are rapists, all men are terrible, men are bad, and me hiding everything. I got in this group, and like for the first time in my life, I just started revealing me. Talking about things I'd never told anybody, thoughts, feelings, actions, behaviors, impulses. And I just started being real. And you know what? This meeting met, I don't know, like 6 a.m. once a week. I got excited to get up and go to that meeting once a week because for the first time in my life, I was just revealing me. Now, the term for that process is I was revealing my toxic shame. The things I believed about myself that I thought made me unlovable, undesirable, a bad person, a person that people couldn't like or want to be close to. And interestingly enough, as I began revealing and sharing these things and getting positive feedback from people, usually they say, thank you for sharing, Robert. And then, they all liked me and wanted to talk. I thought, well, these guys don't all think I'm a terrible person because I have these thoughts or these feelings. I also started going to therapy at that time, learning a lot of valuable things. And then not long after that, I did join a men's group that I was in for probably 4 or 5 years. That was a big, that's where I wrote a big chunk of No More Mr. Nice Guys during that time. Now, while I began to really realize, I'm a nice guy, I think I'm a nice guy, but actually I'm not. And this paradigm that I've been following since I was a young boy, I realize is not serving me well. I'm not honest. I'm not asking for what I want. I'm not making my needs a priority. I have no boundaries. I have all these self-limiting beliefs. And I started, really becoming aware. At that time, as a therapist, I started noticing the men coming to me, two different types of men. I started noticing the patterns. One was the single guys that said, I'm a nice guy. women tell me all the time, you're such a nice guy. Some woman is going to be so lucky to have you someday. And they're going, how come she doesn't want me? How come this woman says some other woman's going to be lucky to have me? Well, why wouldn't she be lucky to have me? I listen to her talk about her problems. I help fix things for her. She talks about the jerk ex-boyfriend she keeps going back to, but she has no clue that. I would say, well, like, you ever asked her out? No. Have you ever told her you want to date her? No. And so here was one category, that mainly the single nice guys that were using what I now call nice guy seduction to try to get women to like them. They didn't think women would like them just as they were, self-limiting belief. So if I listen to them talk about their problems, if I do nice things for them, if I'm always available to them, if I help their sister move, if I pay their car payment, then they'll like me and want to get naked with me.
Yeah.
So I'd see these guys. The second category of men were a lot like me. They were in a relationship, either they had a girlfriend or a wife, and they were coming into couples therapy, sometimes by themselves, sometimes with their partner. And I could finish their sentences for them. They'd say, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I give her whatever she wants. I listen to her talk about her problems. I'm always there for her, but she's always angry. She's always in a bad mood. It's never enough. She's always criticizing, and she never wants to have sex anymore. I thought, hey, these guys are just like me. I know exactly what they're talking about. So probably about 30 years ago, I started my first No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group, quickly followed that up with the second one. And I started writing just chapters, I guess, to give these guys just stuff I was discovering about what I now call nice guy syndrome. I had no intention of writing a book. I was just learning, and I guess I'm a writer naturally. I like to record, what I'm perceiving, and I just kept writing, and these guys, and often their wives or girlfriends, kept saying, Robert, you need to write a book. There's a lot of people out there that need to hear this. So this is I'm just giving you kind of the big picture of how all of this evolved, starting with, my second wife confronting me, if you don't go to therapy, I'm leaving you. And I thought, okay, I don't want to lose her. She's in a bad mood all the time and never wants to have sex, but I don't want to lose her. And so that's where that evolution came from. And it's just kept on going. That started about 30 years ago, and I'm still in a men's program. I just got back from a week in Death Valley with the men's group that I'm in, and still, I keep seeing those layers of the onion, those glass ceilings, those things in my nervous system, my emotional operating system that keep showing up, and I'm at the place now where, how cool, here's something I didn't see, years before, but now it's coming up. Here's more work I get to do. And so for me, I see it as an ongoing process. Guys will say, Robert, but how long does it take to get through this nice guy recovery process? What, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe? And I go, I've been doing it about 30 years. And I'm probably the most experienced, informed, nice guy out there. Because I've worked, not only doing my own work, I've worked with thousands of nice guys. And so, here I am in the ideal nice guy recovery job in that, I do like interviews like this, I do all the things that I do. And I'm still working on my nice guy issues. That because they're so, and we can talk more about this, how they get so deeply wired into our emotional operating system. But the good news is I see things quicker. I notice them. I got tools to work with them. I can own them. I can talk about them. And you just see it as part of a process, not something I got to get fixed or get better right now.
So that is, I think that the framing of the problem puts nice guys, and at this stage they don't know they're a nice guy yet, but the framing of the problem right from the start shows you that puts them right on the back foot. It gives them a disadvantage because from the start they're trying to give themselves some kind of timeline and say, I'm just going to fix this. And maybe it'll be quick too. I'm going to fix this. It's all be good, and I'll just carry on. But you have the most experience. You've coined the term nice guy, working on it for 30 years with your theory and in yourself, and you're not perfect yet. And the point seems like you're getting at is that's actually not the goal, because perfection doesn't actually exist. And that's one important part of many important parts of recovery, is letting that go. That you're not going to get to a point of perfection, because no one reaches that ever.
Yeah, ever. Yeah, you look at professional athletes, Olympic athletes. They keep training, and they know that perfection doesn't exist. Well, some days are better than others.
Yeah.
And what explains that? Some days you have this time, but the next day is a couple seconds slower. Okay, we can keep improving and getting better. But I say in the forward to No More Mr. Nice Guy that I wrote about 5 years ago, when they put out just a cleaned up edition of it.
Mm-hmm.
I said that recovery from nice guy syndrome is not about becoming a different person, a better person. It's really about becoming more of ourselves, learning to love who we are. And that means learning to love every aspect of ourselves,
Yep.
our mistakes, our flaws, our insecurities, our dark side, our perversions, everything about us. If we can love and accept and welcome, ironically, it makes us amazingly attractive to other people, enjoyable to be around. It tends to make us amazingly productive and purposeful and open to abundance when we just learn to love us just as we sit, nothing hidden, there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to be fixed, nothing to be embarrassed of, nothing to have shame about, nothing to have guilt about. We're just a perfectly imperfect human being.
Yeah.
And we all are. We all are. Even though we might look around and go, well, they're more perfect than me. Yeah. I've worked with people long enough that whoever you think has their shit together, like some of these celebrities think they got it all together. Next thing you know, they've hung themselves. What was that about? What was their inner world that nobody else got to see? And so for me, the core definition of recovery from nice guy syndrome is loving ourselves more completely. And that is, we'll never do that perfectly either. That's an ongoing process that hopefully every day we get up and have a deeper love for who we are, exactly as we sit right this moment.
Yeah. We're starting to get into a lot of different qualities and characteristics of nice guys and touching on the recovery process. I want to back up a little bit just for a moment here. How would you, and I'll put this particularly in the context of someone listening to this episode, a man in particular, of course, who hasn't heard of your book, hasn't heard of the word nice guy, I mean, particularly in this context. So I'm going to ask you for a brief summary of what the nice guy syndrome is. What would you say, like, in your own words, and in particular in the context of, as an introduction for a man who, this is going to be their first time, this conversation, the first time they're hearing about this.
Right. And what I'm going to say applies to men and women both, because it applies to actually all humans.
Yeah.
Not all humans develop what I would call the nice guy syndrome, but we all actually have very similar early experiences. And so let me just kind of put something out, and then we'll go backwards.
Yeah.
So my definition of a nice guy, kind of the elevator pitch, is a nice guy is a person who doesn't believe they are okay just as they are. That's that toxic shame. Now, we may be conscious of the toxic shame and see ourselves as such a terrible person, or we may be unconscious of it, as I was, and many nice guys are, thinking, I'm so good. But the reason we thought we had to become so good was deep inside we internalized the belief, I'm not so good. Okay? So a nice guy, nice girl, either way, is a person who doesn't believe they are just okay as they are. And that in order to get their needs met, to get loved, to have a good life, they have to become what they believe other people want them to be. So that means kind of you become the chameleon, lick your fingers, see which way the wind's blowing.
Yep. And
we try to be the person that we think, like if I was a nice guy, I'd be, okay, what does he want me to say?
Yeah.
How do I need to show up? How do I need to make a good impression?
Yeah.
And then I'd go to some other context and with my wife, all right, how does she want me to be? How do I have to show up with her? It's that constant, how do I need to show up to have the approval, external validation of this person or these people or the world in general? So there's the one dynamic of nice guy syndrome is trying to become something different. The other is trying to hide anything about ourselves that we think might get a negative reaction from people. And the things that nice guys tend to hide the most are their feelings and their wants and needs. I can't let people know I feel that. I can't let them see that judgment I have. I can't let her know that how much I like her. I can't let that person know that really pissed me off. Or I can't let them know I want them to do this for me, or I have this need, or we can't let them, because then we might get a negative reaction.
Yeah.
And nice guys hate negative reactions from other people. We tend to want to keep our world nice and smooth and copacetic and have everybody like us, nobody dislike us, nobody ever be upset at us. So as you can already see, there's a lot of gymnastics going on here, a lot of work.
That's what I was going to say.
It's a lot of work.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. Now, where this comes from, we'll back up a little bit. We'll go back to Child Development 101.
Yeah.
Is that as soon as every child pops into the world, they begin to experience trauma. There's many theories that say just birth in itself is traumatic to children.
Mm-hmm.
For 9 months, they've been inside mom, everything's warm, symbiotic, they get fed, they have everything they need, it's comfortable. Unless mom's stressed out or doing drugs, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But when they come into the world, everything's jarring. They're in their physical senses now. They have to breathe. They have to eat. They have to defecate. They have to learn to negotiate this really, scary, overwhelming world.
Yep.
And so just being born is traumatic. And when we're born, and for the first few years of our life, the main part of our brain that is fully functioning, fully online, is down in the brainstem. It's kind of a primitive part, and the primary part is the amygdala. And many of us have heard the term. The amygdala is the source of our fight, flight, freeze mechanism. It's survival, right?
Yeah.
It also manages heart rate, respiration. It's all about survival. It's not about thinking, because the prefrontal cortex of the human brain that is the last part of our brain that evolved as a species and the last part that evolves as individuals. In men, it doesn't finish getting wired up to about age 25.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why our car insurance goes down at age 25. And because insurance companies for years, they kept records of, tickets and accidents, and they didn't know had anything to do with brain development. But about age 25, men quit being so stupid. Under 25, men do a lot of stupid stuff. Well, the reasoning part of their brain isn't fully wired. That's why they don't do reasonable things. About age 25, it gets better. And women, it's usually a little bit younger. So when we're born, the only part of our brain that's fully functioning is that amygdala that's just about survival. Now, the amygdala is also wired into all parts of the brain, and it's hardwired into all of our sensory perceptors, our eyes, our ears, smell, taste, touch, and it gets information before the thinking brain does.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we leap before we look. It's just a reaction, and so that's why we have some intense reactions sometime, and later on we go, why did I blow up? Why did I see red? Why did I want to fight? Why did I withdraw? Why did I think these things? Well, it's because the amygdala gets activated before we can really even think about it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So every experience we have as an infant, when we're completely helpless, vulnerable, needy, dependent, every experience we have gets internalized as emotional memory into the amygdala. That's our emotional operating system, and gets wired into our nervous system. Now, doesn't go into picture memory or word memory in our brain. It goes into emotional memory. And therefore we can't ever really go access these memories as words or pictures. It's all emotion. And this is true for the first days, weeks, months, in the first few years of our life. Everything that happens to us as vulnerable, dependent babies gets internalized inaccurately, because emotionally we're very grandiose and narcissistic as babies. We think we're the cause of everything. So dad's angry. Our emotional is, I caused that, I got to fix it. But we don't have a rational brain to help fix it.
Yeah.
So we try to manage our uncomfortable feelings and control our environment using primitive ways, almost reptilian parts of our brain that aren't evolved. And all of that stuff, I say, gets inaccurately stored up in our emotional memory as a story about myself and myself and the world. That's where the toxic chain comes from, is that we believe we're the cause of every negative experience we have. Now, as we begin to develop thought at around, two-ish and 3 and 4 as our brain's developing, now we start thinking more about our experiences, but how we think is still completely informed by the emotional memory in our amygdala, because it's wired into every part of our brain. So how we think about things is always going to be a direct reflection of how we felt about things as an infant. And then we go through adolescence, adulthood, seeing the world as we think it is, and seeing ourselves as we believe we are, not knowing how much distortion has gone into our roadmap, our paradigm, our operating system that says interact in the world in this way, because that's how the world is, that's how you are, that's how people are. We don't know that. Very few of us know that until maybe we bump into something like we decide we have to go get sober from alcohol, or maybe we have our first kid, or maybe we are having a struggle in a relationship or get divorced, or maybe we have so much anxiety or depression. Maybe we go looking for answers, and maybe we like I did in my early 30s, went looking for answers, and all of a sudden we start finding, oh, my paradigm is not particularly accurate. But yet I believe it to be 100% true. An example I give in No More Mr. Nice Guy, something like, you have a map of San Francisco and you believe it should get you around Los Angeles. But as you're trying to, navigate in Los Angeles using a map for San Francisco, you're just going to keep getting lost, bumping into things, feeling frustrated, feeling defective, not knowing what's wrong. And that's what most of us do in life, is we've got these inaccurate maps. And everybody also, when they have these painful, and again, almost everything is traumatic to a young child. Anything that makes us uncomfortable or scares us, because our biggest fear is abandonment, because abandonment means death to a child. So what children do, and again, at this very unconscious emotional level, is they develop mechanisms to try to soothe the uncomfortable feelings they're feeling. Maybe they do that by sticking their thumb in their mouth. I sucked my thumb till I was in kindergarten. Maybe I was trying to soothe something. Maybe they become needless and wantless. Maybe they scream and cry a lot. Maybe they become pleasers. Maybe they become oppositionally defiant. All of this is trying to manage our uncomfortable feelings and trying to manage our environment and the people in it to try to prevent these uncomfortable feelings from happening again. Now, everybody does this. So everybody reaches childhood, adolescence, adulthood, both with protective defensive armor on and with offensive weaponry that we can use, to either hurt people before they hurt us, or hurt them like they hurt us. Either way. And so then we go into the world with this armor on, this protective armor and this weaponry, and we try to have relationships. We try to get close to people. We try to go get a job and have a career, all the while protecting ourselves from being seen, from being hurt, from being found out, and all the while being, hands are on the trigger, ready to fire if and when necessary to protect ourselves. We all do this, okay? But we all do it in different ways. Nice guys just do it by trying to be pleasing and caring and generous and good listeners and never rocking the boat and going along to getting along and hiding anything. That's how we protect ourselves. And then our weaponry is when it's our passive aggressive behavior, or it's our victim pukes, or is picking unavailable people so we never have to get close, or us being unavailable through porn addiction, or obsessing about surfing the internet or watching Netflix or smoking dope or working a lot. That protects us from having to get close as well. So this is the stuff then we take into the world. And then again, as I said, the world is always going to look like what we believe the world to look like. My coach calls this our occurring world. So And one of the things I've done in my men's program, we've done since I've been in the program about 4 years, done it 2 or 3 times, where we write down our occurring world belief. To me, the world is, or the world treats me as this. And for me, one of mine, and this has really actually been a challenge one to overcome, an occurring world belief for me is I have to put up with shit to get love. Now, I got to put up with people treating me badly, or being unavailable, or being hurtful, or in order for them to love me. And if that's my belief about me and the world, guess what my world is going to look like?
Yeah, you're going to manifest that.
I'm going to manifest that. I'm going to find people that treat me like shit, hoping that at some point, if I'm good enough, they'll love me. And so in working to change that, I mean, I've been doing therapy for years, doing different things, but I've been working on a different worldview, occurring world, is that love rains down on me. Love just rains down on me with an abundance of love. And the funny thing is, as I keep kind of work at shifting those worldviews, I do have more love in my life. I have more blessings. I have more people that care about me. My whole world has been transitioning. For example, when I began this men's program I'm in now, 4 to 5 years ago, I had maybe 1.5 guy friends. I just spent a week in the desert with 50 guys, all of whom treat me well and are loving towards me and think I'm an amazing human being. And I treat them the same. And so now love just rains down on me. And it's a much more enjoyable way to live in the world than, I got to put up with this shit in order for anybody to like me and want to be with me or want to have sex with me or treat me well.
Right. And an important part you touched on here, and as you touched on in the book too, is for nice guys, and I'm included in this, absolutely, is they're completely unconscious of these things happening. So we used the example earlier in this conversation when you were talking about how, like with your experience with I think it was your second wife, when she was saying like, for example, like, how long have you been harboring this frustration against me? And it was like months and months. Or when you've talked to guys in later years and told them like, well, have you ever tried like asking the woman out? And all these are revolutionary. Absolutely revolutionary ideas.
As simple as they are, they're like, oh, this is a game changer. I can actually ask her out for a date, or I can actually ask the person to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Or I can actually say, I'm going to get off the phone. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, we can do that.
They don't even know. I'm included. I'm not picking on men. I'm included in this list. They don't even know. It's not just, oh wow, that's insane. They don't even. It's not even they're not aware at all that it's an option they have ever.
I'll give you an example of that. The first therapist I started working with in my 30s, when I started working on now what I call nice guy issues. I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, I got to go to therapy to figure out how to get my wife to treat me better. Why being a nice guy doesn't make her like me more. And this I started working with a woman therapist. And in my very first session with her, she did a little practice with me around boundaries. Now, she put a string on the ground and she said, we're going to talk about boundaries. She said, you go stand on that side. I'm going to be on this side. That side of the line is your space, your boundary. I'm going to walk across your line. I'm going to put my hands on your shoulders and start pushing you backwards. Now, she was a little old lady. She was older than me and not very big. And she said, when you begin to feel uncomfortable, I want you to stop me. Okay. So she starts pushing on me. I say, stop. She keeps pushing. I keep backing up. I said, stop now. And she kept pushing. And finally, it's about my back to the wall. I finally got into, my best linebacker stance and just stood firm and put my hands up and stopped her. And she smiled and said, good. And I thought, what is this? And then she began to talk about boundaries, how most of us don't know where our lines are. We're never clear with people about what we want, what we don't want, who can come into our space, what they can do while they're there, how long they can stay, when it's time for them to go. I mean, and here I was already in my 30s, in my second marriage, already had a PhD in marriage and family therapy. I had never heard of boundaries.
Yeah.
There was like a revolutionary concept. And I mean, this is actually true for the majority of the planet, because again, going back to when we were little, like, few weeks, few months, few years old, we were smaller than everybody else. And the big people could do whatever they wanted to the little people, us. And we didn't know. We could say stop, or I don't like that. In fact, when children hit what we call the terrible twos, around 2, when they start saying no, myself, I want, we call that terrible. So not only do children not get reinforced for setting boundaries, they get told they're bad and maybe punished for them asking for what they want or saying no. So, I mean, I learned this in my 30s and thinking, what the hell? I didn't know I could tell someone, stop. I didn't know I could tell someone I'm going to get off the phone now. I didn't know I could tell somebody I'm leaving. I didn't know I didn't have to put up with shit to get love. I thought you just have to put up with whatever people do, and you just suffer through it. And then hopefully they quit at some. Hopefully they know they're hurting you at some point, or that you're in pain or you're unhappy, or hopefully they just read your mind and know it. I did not know that I could say, I don't like that, or I'd like this, please. So revolutionary, but yet so simple.
Yeah. So the book is it's unique, and what makes it even more helpful and practical is you call it a practical guide to recovering from the nice guy syndrome, because it's a workbook as well. It's not just a book, and it's not just theory. You actually give men actionable items they can do, things they can actually do, challenging thoughts they have, and which you could say is smaller scale, not trivial, smaller scale things like that, or little exercises they can do with people and relationships they have, all the way to larger scale things like which can give nice guys a lot of fear and anxiety, which are going on weekend getaways or week-long retreats and things like that. And that comes with anxiety and fear, which you demonstrated pretty well in the book. Is, what is that? The source of that, it seemed to me from reading the book and understanding this, is that's every nice guy's childhood paradigm. Like that, the anxiety comes when it bumps up against the real world. So every time that happens, nice guy's like, that's weird. That's not that's not how it worked when I was younger. And that caused a lot of confusion. So this is, I think, an interesting question to ask you is, it's you say in the book, like you can't half-ass the process. And I remember you say in particular, it leads to needless suffering if you're just going to read and not do the work, or if you're only going to do some of the many different version-free exercises. There's a lot of work nice guys have to do on their own. One is an important one is challenging these thoughts, these self-limiting thoughts, like from the self-limiting belief system. It's been some hard work for myself. I imagine it's hard work for nice guys. What does that usually look like from your experience for nice guys when they are on their own and these thoughts are popping up during the day? What does that look like from your experience when the first times when nice guys decide to do something different, like you say in the book, and decide, okay, you know what, I actually don't have to feel shame right now, or why do I have to be worried right now? What does that look like to you when men first start that process?
Well, that's a good question. There's probably about 2 or 3 questions in there. So let me see if I can pull it apart and answer 2 or 3 questions. One piece is, you mentioned the anxiety, and when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, I pretty much focused on, during that time, around shame, that toxic shame, the sense that I'm not okay just as I am, and pretty much the paradigm around both how we got nice guy syndrome and how to recover from it was around shame, that we inaccurately internalized beliefs about ourselves, and we had to learn to let that out and get more accurate beliefs about ourselves. So that's why I say in the book, to really do this recovery, you can't do it alone, because you didn't internalize these beliefs in social isolation. You're not going to get rid of them. So I would say, go find safe people, a coach, a therapist, a men's group, 12-step group, and start working on revealing you, like I did in that first 12-step group I went to, just sharing everything about me I'd never wanted anybody to know about me. And then as I did, 2 things happened. One is I let it out. I go, oh, I don't have to keep this secret. This doesn't make me a bad person. The other thing I realized is nobody thought I was bad. In fact, I got, especially when I started doing this with therapists where they can give you feedback. They usually don't in a 12-step group, but with therapy and men's group, people started giving me feedback. Robert, you're not bad for that. That sounds actually pretty normal. Or, I'm that way too. And you start releasing this shame and this belief, I'm terminally unique. I'm terminally bad. I'm the only one bad like this. So shame is a core component of nice guy syndrome. Pretty much everything we do is built around that shame. Now, around the time that I finished writing No More Mr. Nice Guy, now over probably 25 to 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I began also noticing the anxiety that you mentioned and began talking with people, guys I worked with, about anxiety. And it seemed like almost every group, guys start saying, Robert, can we talk about soothing anxiety again? And I came to realize that nice guy syndrome probably has two pillars at its foundation: shame and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That pretty much everything a nice guy does is to manage anxiety, either by not doing anything that makes them anxious or avoiding situations that make them anxious. That trying to be what we think other people want to be, hiding anything. So shame and anxiety are the two pillars of nice guy syndrome. So that means to do our recovery, we have to find safe places to release our shame and get a more accurate view of ourselves. And we have to learn tools for soothing ourselves so that we can take action even when we feel anxious, whether that's setting a boundary or talking to a pretty woman or telling our boss, I got to go home. I can't stay late. Whatever that anxiety is, we have to find tools. And luckily, there are many. Breathing is the number one, just breathing,
Mm-hmm.
grounding our feet, telling ourselves we'll handle it. And then just learning from experience, all these things I thought the world was going to blow up if I did it, they don't. Now, as I was doing my recovery, again, a lot of things I did was about revealing my shame to save people. The other thing was beginning to confront anxieties, often, especially in relationship, because that's where my nice guy syndrome is the strongest. Personal relationship, friends, and even with strangers at times. So I began in my personal relationship asking more clearly for what I wanted, which made me anxious. Most nice guys are terrible receivers. We think people are going to be mad at us if we have wants or needs. Learning to set boundaries, learning to maintain my own personal freedom and desires, to say, I'm going to go play basketball Monday night. And I go, yeah, I'm going to go play basketball Monday night.
Right.
I'll see you later. Or I'm going to go get a massage. Another time, how long it's been since I had a massage? I go, I'll see you later. To start just, doing that. And one really early example that I like to tell around this anxiety and even shame is wrapped into it. I was working with a therapist early on that I did a lot of work with her because she led the men's group I was in. But I remember in one of my first sessions with her, I was complaining about my then wife, second wife, who just wanted to talk all the time, just complain about shit all the time. Just, let's just process this to death. And, I'm sitting there and I'm bored. I try to fix it so she'll quit talking. I won't ask questions. I think if I don't ask any questions, she'll quit talking soon.
Yeah.
Or I get bored, or I'm looking out the window, or a squirrel, or I bring up something, anything. Because, she could go on for hours, really. And she often wanted to start at 11 o'clock at night. And this could go on, I'm going, I got to get to sleep. And it's 3 a.m. and she's still wanting to talk. Yeah. So I was telling this to my therapist. And this was another woman therapist, again, a little bit older than me. And I was telling her, and she said, Robert, you don't have to listen to her talk. And I go, what? I said, yes, you do. I said, say that again. And she said, just because a woman wants to talk doesn't mean you have to listen. And I go, yes, you do. It's carved in stone. My mother taught me this. My mother wanted to talk, and so it made me a good boy. It made me, I was the good man because I listened to her talk until she was done talking, which with my mother, it could be hours as well. And the therapist said, Robert, actually is more loving and more authentic to tell her you're not interested, or you don't have the energy, or you don't have the time to listen to her talk.
Yeah.
That's not going to go well with my wife. The roof's going to come off if I ever did something like that. So, that made me anxious. Yeah. Right? That triggered a lot of anxiety. But I hated sitting there listening to her talk for hours because she would just keep saying the same shit over and over and over again, thinking somehow it's different. The second time she says it, and the third time, no, it's still the same thing you said the first time an hour and a half ago. So I remember, I had to build up some nerve to do this because it scared me. And I didn't do it as cleanly as I could have, but I have empathy for myself, so I don't judge myself. But she started in on something, and I thought, I know where this is going. And I thought, I got to do this. And I said, I need to tell you something. I kind of held my hand up to stop her. I said, I'm really tired. I just don't have the bandwidth to listen right now. Now, if I was really truthful, I'd say I have absolutely no fucking interest in listening to this shit. That would have been the truth. It's the same shit I listen to all the time. I'm not interested. But I kind of, my anxiety was too. I said, I just don't have the bandwidth to listen to it right now. I'm tired. And she goes, okay. And she walked away. She didn't stomp away, didn't blow up, still have a roof, it didn't get blown off, no nuclear explosions.
She didn't leave you right then and there, which is a fear.
No, she just kind of walked away, and then I'm thinking, so I'm still pretty anxious about this. I'm going, the other shoe's going to fall. The sky is going to fall sooner or later. I used to tell my second wife that her middle name ought to be Overreact, because that's what she did in every situation.
Yeah.
And she never actually overreacted to that because she knew that was true. So anyway, and then so like an hour or so later, she comes back. I'm thinking, oh, what now? And she says, thank you. I'm going, for what? She goes, thank you for telling me that you didn't have the energy to listen. She says, I went and called a girlfriend. I got it all worked out. So she goes, I appreciate that you told me you couldn't listen. I go, fuck, why didn't someone tell me this years ago? All the hours and hours I've spent listening to women talk when I didn't really want to. So but that was purely it was two things. One, I thought it gave me value, i.e. the shame issue. I'm good because I listen to a woman talk. She's chosen me. And I realized now when women want to talk, they'll talk to anybody, the checkout lady, their cat, whatever. You're not special. But the other piece was I had anxiety to say, I don't want to, or it doesn't interest me, or not now. That triggered a lot of anxiety because as a child, you didn't get to tell the big people what you wanted or didn't want. They got to say what they wanted. And again, that's true for most of us. So having that experience, and the reason I tell that, because to this day, that had to be 30 years ago at least, I still get strength from that of saying, all right, my perception of the world is that if I ask for what I want, I have a boundary, whatever, bad things are going to happen. The truth is, no, they don't. I've survived everything. Right. And so that alone becomes a self-soothing tool. Everything I was afraid was going to be the end of the world hasn't ended yet. I'm still alive and ticking. So apparently I've survived everything my reptilian brain had anxiety about was going to go wrong. So again, this is just a practice of soothing ourselves, breathing, saying I'll handle it. And a mantra I've been using actually for a few months now. I got invited a couple of years ago, but just did it last November, to go down to a place called Rhythmia in Costa Rica. And it's an ayahuasca retreat center where you go and do plant medicine. I'd never done plant medicine, but they invited me to come down and be a guest speaker for a men's only retreat. And I said, well, I've never done ayahuasca. And they said, come do it a couple times. And so I went. And one of the things they taught, it's just, basic as you're doing plant medicine, but I apply this now to everything, whether you're doing plant medicine or not. Yeah. They would say, here's a simple process when you're doing a ceremony or doing plant medicine or afterwards. They go, breathe. So you always got to remember, usually when we're anxious or stressed, we quit breathing. We hunch over. We get shallow. Yeah. Breathe. Number one, open. So just open ourselves up emotionally, physically. And then 3, go towards what's hard. Go towards what scares you. Go towards the darkness. And, that's actually a really good model for everything in life that scares us. It triggers anxiety. Breathe, open, and go towards what scares you. Yep. And what I've been saying lately, and I kind of stole this mantra a little bit from Stephen Pressfield, who wrote the book War of Art. Great book. Highly recommend it.
I've heard about it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Read it. Listen to it. He is mainly talking about resistance, how resistance blocks us from achieving what we want in life, usually around artistic endeavor. And he says resistance is your North Star. It points you in the direction of whatever you're resisting. That's what you need to go. That's the direction. So I've been using that around with fear and anxiety. I've been telling men lately, anxiety is your North Star. It tells you the direction you need to go. Fear is your North Star. Well, whatever scares you, breathe, open, go in that direction. And it is amazing how, as you do that, most of the things we're afraid of are in our head. They're not going to kill us. And what's so amazing is as I've been living that mantra, really before I went to arrhythmia, but really since, of this mantra of just breathing and opening and saying yes to whatever is happening.
Yeah.
Byron Katie talks a lot about that, of just saying yes and loving what is. Buddha talked about it a long time ago. By doing that, we think that, all these terrible things are going to happen, but the opposite's been true. My life and my world keeps expanding in ways that I could not have imagined just a few years ago. The amount of love coming in my life, opportunity, money, adventures, just things I didn't see coming, keep coming because I've been breathing, opening, and going in the direction of what scares me. And the truth is, for a lot of us, it's the really good stuff out there that scares us the most. Love, financial success, professional success, notoriety. Those things are scary. And so if we've been practicing going in the direction of whatever scares us, the world just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger in our experience of it.
Yeah.
So it's letting go of the shame, and it's dealing with the anxiety. And as long as we're alive and ticking, we're going to have anxiety. New things will always scare us. But the good news is we can keep building on those old things that scared us and say, I went towards them, things worked out, life got better, I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah. I agree entirely, especially in your point about, it's a point about challenging the way that we've been taught to view what we would traditionally call negative emotions, fear and anxiety, anger. I think a better way, and at least for me, at the very least for me personally, the way to view that is those are part of yourself. And I don't think it's a particularly good to get into a habit of trying to, run away from or push aside or compartmentalize certain parts of yourself. And you talk in the book about the concept of becoming an integrated male, and for the context of men, and this is part of it. I think this is the right way to approach it, is looking at these emotions, even the ones that you don't like, the ones you might find destructive or scary, is they're guides, they're tools. And like you said, it's exactly the way, is they point you toward what to focus on. We know that, it's an old adage, it's old conventional wisdom by now, that you should be aiming at, if something scares you, that's what you should be running towards. But you can apply that to worry, you can apply that to anger as well. They're not things to run away from. They can actually, depending on the way you want to frame it, you can use them as valuable guides to show you what's important. If someone does something make you angry, that's not nothing. That's something you have to pay attention to, because something in your body or in your mind it's there for a reason. So you should probably spend some time to think about it and pay attention to it.
Yeah, there's meaning and story to everything. Now, sometimes the story is just some old emotional memory on our part. Sometimes the meaning is, we need to set a boundary today. We need to ask for what we want today. We need to say yes to that opportunity that frightens us because it's new and out of our comfort zone, but it has so much opportunity. Whatever it is. And I'm with you. I don't love the term negative emotions. Now, I can understand that we tend to think of them negatively and wish we didn't have them. But they're probably the most powerful emotions in terms of giving us a more accurate paradigm or roadmap. If it scares you, go do it. If it makes you anxious, lean into it. If it makes you angry, go deal with what makes you angry. Go say to the person, I'm angry. Can we talk about this? Go do it rather than just going the opposite direction or just sitting with it and repressing it. Because those things all got to come out somewhere. They usually come out in our body, in our sleep, in ailments, in addictions. They're going to come out somewhere. So as they said down at Rhythmia, what's coming is going. So basically, whatever is up, if it's fear, it's on its way out. If it's anger, if it's up, it's on its way out. So whatever comes up, let's go with it. Let's process it and let it go. Let it go. Let that energy out of our bodies, out of our emotional operating system, out of our nervous system, out of our minds. Let's just go with it. And to do that, going back to that safe people thing, it helps to have safe people, that you're not trying to do this all by yourself. Because like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't have many trusted men in my life. And now that I do, I can call up 25 guys right now who would be there for me in a heartbeat. I know at least a dozen guys that would get on an airplane and fly to me in this moment if I needed them to. And I would do the same for them. And I tell you what, if you have that kind of resource system, that kind of tribe, right, you can tackle a lot of things in life. But if you're just doing it by yourself, everything's going to feel overwhelming.
Right. Yeah. How are we doing on time on your end? I'll leave it up to you. What do you think?
We can give it another 15 minutes, wherever you want to take it. And we'll just kind of pull it towards wrapping up within the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So this I think is going to be an interesting one to ask you. The book came out. Wow, how long has it been now?
I think in the print edition it says 2002, 2003.
Yeah,
it had come out earlier as an ebook, and then when it came out print edition. And so, around 2003. So we're coming up on, right about 20 years it's been out.
Yeah, 20 years. This will be a two-part question here. What are some of the biggest ways it's impacted? I mean, you wrote a book for other people, but this was a journey, an evolution, you call it. You had to go on yourself first before you could ever. You had to help yourself and understand this before you could help other men struggling with this. Since coming out of the book, how has your life changed? From the book coming out, because I'm sure it's been a roller coaster since then. And what are your predictions, both for the book moving forward, and then as it relates to that, if you think that how helpful you think it'll be in it? That might be more than two questions, huh?
It's about 5 at least, but I think I can handle them all. So let me create a timeline for this. I did not set out to write a book, as I said. I was just writing chapters, and really, when people kept saying you need to write a book, and as I really, over a period of about 6 to 7 years, I really did kind of get a pretty solid version of pretty much how the book looks now, and I knew I was just close to finishing it, and I quit. I just quit working on it, and people kept telling me, my then wife, my kids, my clients, Robert, when are you going to finish the book? When are you going to finish the book? Yeah, I am. And then I realized I'd hit a wall. I'd hit my own glass ceiling. So I got back into therapy, and I just realized that I was afraid of being attacked. I was afraid. My biggest fear was that nobody would give a fuck. That I'd spend all this time writing a book that I thought was important, and either they'd read it and go, eh. And so, I had all my own fears, maybe of exposure, of whom I had to publish a book, fears of what if it is a big success and I don't know how to handle that.
Yeah. Or maybe you think, not put words in your mouth, maybe part of that is, oh man, I actually thought this was a bigger problem than it is. And it's not actually going to end up being that relevant to a lot of men. Maybe that was part of it too.
Yeah. Like I said, who would care? So I got back into therapy and then came to the realization, all right, I started writing these chapters just to give to my clients so they could have an understanding of what I was coming to understand. And I thought, I'm going to scale back, that I got to get a book. People kept saying, Robert, you need to write a book. It could be a bestseller. You should go on Oprah. They always said those things. It could be a bestseller. You could go on Oprah. Fuck, I don't know if I could go on Oprah or not. All these lofty expectations of it. So I scaled it back. I just need to finish it. So I've got, something I can hand my clients when they walk in the door. So, and then I did. I finished it pretty quickly in that moment. Then it took about 3 years to get it published. It started getting, I was hustling a lot. I was, talking to people, getting radio interviews, get some newspaper interviews.
Yeah.
And then Esquire magazine, a writer for Esquire, said he'd been Googling, just looking for topics, and he came across my website. And he said, I want to come out and spend a week with you and do a story about nice guy syndrome.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So I really doubled down on trying to find a publisher, and I found an agent who really liked it. He was an experienced New York agent, and so he started marketing it, and we took it to a lot of big publishing companies, and then almost every editor I talked to, usually women, said, Robert, I really like your book. It's well written. I think is you've done a good job, but our marketing department says men won't buy self-help books. And I kept saying, you don't know the men I'm working with. They want this. They want to be better. And then and I just kept hustling it. And then two local Seattle newspapers in the same week ran full-page lifestyle section stories about me in the book. And it hit national media like that.
Yeah.
Fox News, Bill O'Reilly interviewed me. Rush Limbaugh talked about it. Today's Show called me. I can't think of the other big, evening show.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, publishers got interested, and we got a contract. And so it came out, like I said, print edition 2003. Now, most books, the average shelf life of a book, new book, is about 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
And most books, they have a little bit, if they sell a few, and if they don't start selling well, bookstores quit carrying them. And this is kind of before Amazon, where you can have a book on Amazon forever and they don't care. It's not a bookstore. But in my book, didn't have just a giant impact. It slowly built. And probably about 10 years ago, it started having, my royalty checks started getting quite a bit bigger.
Yeah.
And they continue to get bigger every year. I'll just put this out there. I was looking about 2 weeks ago. I was looking at a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon to buy down here for my wife to drive.
Yeah.
And I was looking at about 3-year-old, and it was about $42,000. And I thought, I don't really have the spare cash. Just go pay cash. And I try to do that if I buy cars. And I'm about to go to LA, go to the desert. I thought, okay, I'm going to play with the idea that I'm going to manifest. Like I said, I'm not a big believer in I'm going to manifest $42,000. No, that's small thinking. $45,000. I'm going to manifest when I get back from the desert. I'm going to have $45,000. I occasionally get nice size checks for royalty. And so right before I went to the desert, about a $10,000 check came in.
Wow.
Got back from the desert. That's not unusual. That's pretty much a monthly.
Okay, yeah.
Well, actually, it's continued to do well. Got back from the desert, and my son gets the checks. My agent sends them to my son because he's in the U.S. He deposits them in the bank. And a $41,000 check had come in. I go, how cool is that? There's $52,000 that manifested.
Yeah.
And I'd only said 45.
Yeah.
2 days later, I get another email from my agent's office. Says, Robert, we're sending you a $50,000 check. And I thought, what the fuck? $102,000 manifested. So that doesn't happen every month. But the book, that and all the books and all the versions, translation of No More Mr. Nice Guy, Dating Solutions for Men, are doing well. So the point is, men are wanting to work on themselves. They are wanting to improve. Now, how my life has evolved, like I said, I split with my second wife the same year the book came out. I got to be single and live alone for at least 12 years or more, which was amazingly powerful. I never saw myself as a single guy. Married my first wife 2 days after I graduated from college. Mm-hmm. So I'd never really been single, learned to live my own life. I've had a lot of great experiences being single, dated a lot of great women, had some good relationships, living now here in Mexico. Been married to my present wife for 5.5 years. She's an amazing human being, love her to death. I feel so grateful. My visibility around the world keeps growing. I do, lots of these kinds of interviews.
Yeah.
The royalty checks keep getting bigger. The love keeps growing. Opportunities and offers keep coming in to go do this great thing, that fun thing. So all I can say is that both in the process of writing the book and doing my nice guy work, my world has expanded, and my books, primarily No More Mr. Nice Guy, have continued to flourish. And I went back to New York 4 years ago and read for an audible version. It'd been read by a voice first time around.
Yeah.
And when I told my agent, I said, I want to read it, and I want worldwide distribution. And so they told the company that had the contract that fed it to Audible, that we were going to cancel the contract. And they said, okay, we're going to and at this date is you're free.
Yeah.
And then like 2 weeks later, my agent sends me an email and says, we've got an offer from the same company. We suggest you consider accepting this offer. So the vice president of that company said, Robert, we want to keep you. You and No More Mr. Nice Guy are synonymous. We want you to read it. We want you to be part of our evergreen catalog. And we're offering you a $75,000 advance to re-sign with us and $5,000 to come to New York and record it. I go, yeah, I'll sign that. So, but my point is, as I was reading it again, because I hadn't really read it in depth in a number of years, because when I was writing it, I was so much in it all the time. I didn't know if it was any good or not, because you're just in it. So now, say 15, 16 years after it was originally published, I went back to read it. And reading it, I still got tears in my eyes as stories came up of people I remember. It's about real people. Of big changes they made. I got choked up at times reading it. And as I read it, I thought, I'm really proud of this. I did a good job. And what hit me is that it is no longer, even though the book hasn't changed, is no longer just a book for, quote, recovering nice guys. I think it truly is a manifesto for all men of how to live a good life, how to live their best life. And so I think from that point of view, it's going to continue to do well, as it has done for the last several years, in terms of getting more translations of it in different languages, sales of it. And when I went on my book tour back in early 2003, across the U.S., a lot of interviewers said, Robert, do you see like a worldwide men's movement like the worldwide women's movement? I said, no, not really. I don't think there's any one thing that will unify men. And I said, there's other factors. Now, 20-something years later, I was right and wrong. I still don't think there's one unifying factor to have a big movement like feminism was. Mm-hmm. But I was wrong in that I do believe there is a worldwide men's movement happening. And I think some people can see it, but I think for most of it is quiet and somewhat underground. And here's what I mean. Men, whether we know it or not, need tribe. We need initiation. Our ancestors had tribe and initiation for millions of years. We don't nowadays. So what men are doing without realizing it, they go looking for tribe and initiation. Now, how they might do it is going and signing up for martial arts. They might do it by getting into a 12-step program for addiction. They might do it by joining a divorce support group at their church. They might do it signing up for a pickup boot camp. They might do it for signing up, for a Mankind Project or some other men's type program. So what's happening is men are actually out there seeking community with other men. Mm-hmm. And I think it is now at the proportions of a worldwide movement, because I hear from people all over the world all the time. Yeah. And men are searching and they're looking for meaning and they're looking for direction.
I agree.
And I feel blessed that No More Mr. Nice Guy exists at a time in history when men have gotten so lost, right? So domesticated, so disconnected from anything that's meaningful or valuable. Sitting and being on social media all day is not at all valuable. Playing video games all day, smoking dope, watching Netflix, and that's how a lot of men spend their lives. Or chasing money. They want to become billionaires. And they're lost. And men are searching for something deeper. And I feel really grateful that No More Mr. Nice Guy is so easily accessible to so many people in the world now. And I get emails every day, countless emails every day from guys all over the world saying the book changed their life. I must have been following them around. How could I know them so well? Yeah. And I get emails from guys that say, Robert, you're the good father I never had. You're the best mentor that I ever had. Guys, some I know, some I don't know. And so I really do think we're at a point of time in history where men are looking for answers, again, whether it's, in addiction recovery, in martial arts, or, how to date, how to pick up women, how to hold their marriage together, whatever. And with the internet and more men out there working as coaches and guides, we live in an amazing time right now, and I'm grateful to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's excuse me. Yeah, that's I expected that. That it was me quite the roller coaster ride for you, and um, I agree. It's an awakening, and there is, I think you said, albeit maybe a quieter, more underground movement, but there is a movement, regardless, for men, and there is a, a craving and some kind of wandering and this feeling of being lost that humans and men here in this context didn't always have to contend with.
Yeah.
You could say even maybe for the vast majority of human history, we didn't even have time during our days to ask ourselves these questions. And now that we do, and in the more abundant world we live in today, men, yeah, they find themselves spinning around in circles or wasting their time, and they know they're doing it too. And you're giving them a stepping stone on that path, and it could be the first step for them, opening their eyes, and that's the first step they take. It's really good work you're doing. I appreciate the book immensely. Thank you for writing it.
You're welcome. I wrote it just for you.
Yeah. It's I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on the show today. I really enjoyed talking with you, and yeah, I think you're going to continue to keep hearing those pieces of gratitude from men, and not just men, just from people in general, from women too, women in general, like you say, and for good reason. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on.
And thank you for the invitation, and I've enjoyed getting to chat with you.
Yeah. To end here, to wrap up, is there anything, I always do this with guests, if there's any plugs they want to do, if there's anything you think I missed at your introduction or something throughout that you want people to know about, or a resource or somewhere they can reach out to, is there anything you'd want people to know?
Let me just tell people how to connect with me. Just drglover.com, drglover.com. My website, it has all my courses, workshops, podcasts, lots of resources. And if they Google "No More Mr. Nice Guy," I come up in the top several spots, even ahead of Alice Cooper, which is kind of cool. And if they Google Robert Glover, they'll find me. But drglover.com is the best way to find me. So yeah, I'd love for people to come check out what I'm putting out in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's it on my end. And we're up on time here. Looks like it's just about perfect. So thanks again, Dr. Glover, for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope a lot of people listening get some value out of this.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. You take care.